In this video, I want to answer your commonly asked piano questions. We're going to cover things like practice, how to progress in piano, what to prioritize when you're practicing. It's going to be a fun one. Let's get into it. Milos asks, what are some tips for beginners to stay motivated to practice? I have 2 tips for you today. Tip number 1 is to play the songs you love. This one's quite an underrated one. So as you are playing piano, you're just starting out, it's really important that you play songs you already know. Recently, one of my students and I worked on this. If you didn't pick that up, that was Clocks by Coldplay. You can find the sheet music very easily on musescore.com. Because this was a song he loved and he knew by ear, it was a great and fun learning experience for us to learn how to play it, to realize it in his hands, and to learn a bit about music theory, to learn a little bit about how to read sheet music from something he already knew how it sounded. So please prioritize by playing many songs that you love. And don't just play one, please play 10. The second tip I have for you is to use a beginner book. So as a beginner, you probably need to have kind of a textbook to learn some of those really basic things like how to read sheet music, rhythms, what they look like, how to coordinate your hands, simple exercises to play, simple nursery rhymes to play. Some people find them a little bit dry, but I think it's good to have at least some kind of starting resource to base all your learning around from. So you can check out things like the Alfred's Basic Piano Library. You can check out some of the Faber books as well. Next question, Egypt5154 asks, when should I move from one difficulty of piece to the next? For example, early intermediate to intermediate. I like this question. It's about when to progress to the next piece. Often in my own teaching practice, I like to aim for the student to practice for a piece to get up to about a B+ or an A- level before we start to think about moving on. If it's possible, we can try to hone it to that A+ level. So that's where you are playing it perfectly, dynamics and articulations, it's fluent, note perfect, rhythm perfect. If it can be that, great. But as someone's piano teacher, I'm also thinking more long-term for this student. I'm also thinking it's better for them perhaps to get more pieces to that B+ A- level. For example, to get, let's say, 20 pieces in that year to that level, rather than, let's say, 5 pieces to the A+ level, where it's kind of pitch perfect, note perfect, rhythm perfect. But roughly speaking, you've played this piece for 1 to 2 months and you have a general sense that you understand the piece. I would suggest you to move on and learn new material. All right, next question. QWERTY asks, hi Jazer, I love your videos. One question I have is, what are some key things to keep in mind in terms of technique when playing octaves? I'd say let's keep these few things in mind. Firstly, to keep a very loose wrist. As you're playing octaves, one of the greatest kind of problems with it is tension. If your forehand is tense and your fingers are really tense, you'll get really tired playing that part. So try to be really loose, be really flappy. A bonus advanced octave tip for you as well is to try to play your pinky just slightly louder than your thumb. So let's say the pinky is playing at a volume of 10, the thumb is playing at a volume of, let's say, 6 or 5. This creates a very professional tone. Top voice louder than the bottom voice. Next question is by Tim's Piano 5054. Hey Jazer, I just wanted to ask, what are your tips for learning Chopin? Chopin is a composer I love dearly. I've worked extensively on him. I've worked on his preludes. I've worked on many of his waltzes. I've worked on some of his etudes. I worked on some of his scherzos and polonaises. Chopin is a bit of a beast when it comes to the piano, so most of his repertoire belong to that late intermediate to advanced stage. If you're interested to learn Chopin, I recommend you to take technique very seriously. So you want to make sure you're doing things like all your Hanons, all your scales, or your arpeggios. There's a plethora of Chopin pieces to play, and I recommend if you're starting to maybe to look at some of his waltzes first. Maybe do a quick Google search about which Chopin pieces are the easiest to start. What is my name asks, any tips to memorize sheet music? If you're someone that wants to memorize the piece you're practicing, your level of being able to do it is directly correlated with the amount of repetition you do in each part. For example, recently I'm learning a really scary piece. It's called La Campanella by Liszt. To get a very complicated sheet music part into my head, I will be practicing that many, many times. I often like to do it in terms of 3 or 5, and sometimes if I can, 7 times. I practice a session many, many times. I maybe start with a couple of measures, sometimes 4, sometimes 8. It's very important to consistently do this every day too, because the more you do it daily and the more you sleep on it, the more it's going to enter your long-term memory. So do it in small sections. Make sure you really prioritize repetition. Don't just play once or twice and expect to remember. It's not going to work. You're going to repeat it constantly to get it into your muscle memory. Rich Baker asks, what do you do when you feel like you've hit a brick wall and your skills aren't progressing and you don't have a piano teacher to help guide you through improving? Now, when I hear this question, my first curiosity point is, what exactly is your brick wall? Is it maybe sight reading? Is it potentially a certain technique thing you're doing that's stopping you from progressing to harder pieces? Is it maybe music theory, this kind of a lack of comprehension of what you're playing? So I prioritize trying to figure out what this brick wall is, right? Maybe it's getting maybe just a couple of lessons from a teacher. Maybe it's even asking your friend, okay, just to have a listen to you, stress test a couple of things. If I were you, I would try my best to figure out and diagnose what this roadblock actually is, what this speed bump actually is. Try to diagnose it and then try to improve in that area, whether that's sight reading, whether that's music theory, whether that's technique. Potentially, it's also a case of maybe you're playing some pieces that are not so interesting anymore. And if that's the case, please try to explore more pieces. Whatever level you're in, try to go to YouTube or Spotify, listen to a whole bunch of pieces, and try to build a repertoire of songs or pieces that you really want to play and try to work towards that. Sarah Banda asks, as a follow-up question to that, what if you do have a teacher and you're not going anywhere? Is it time to quit and try something new? Potentially that's a good way to do it. So maybe you just need to pause lessons, maybe try someone new. Maybe it's that you just need to take a bit of a break with piano, take a couple of months off, come back to it and see how you feel then. I'd say it's a good thing to work with different people. Every pianist has their own biases and has their own strengths. By engaging a whole bunch of people, you're going to get the best out of everyone. Next question. Hi, I would like to know about how to study piano by myself. What should I study? Chords, arpeggios, scales? What should I practice every day? Studying piano by yourself is possible if you have the right resources and you have the right motivation. Those things you just said in your questions are very, very important. So you want to prioritize chords, you want to prioritize scales, arpeggios. I would also add to that lots of sight reading. Okay, so try to understand the notation system and try to read firstly very simple music and progress to harder ones as you keep getting better. I would say practice some techniques. I would say practice some exercises too, things such as the Hanon exercises. And my goal for you as a complete beginner who is learning by yourself is to try to clear as many pieces as you can. Try to play as many pieces as you can. Don't just play 2 or 3 pieces. Aim for in that year to play somewhere between maybe 20 to 30 very, very short pieces. But the more pieces you play, the more pieces you analyze, the more pieces you expose yourself to, the more different patterns and genres you expose yourself to, it's impossible to not improve. Heidi Sawalker asks, when did you start playing piano? What's your job besides being a pianist? My very, very first piano lesson was when I was 9. However, I did not take it seriously. I was very lazy. I didn't do anything right. And it was really in my adult years, in my 20s, that I really started to pick it up, take it seriously, focus on technique, focus on sight reading, and progressed immensely. So I can relate very, very much to adults who are picking up piano and wanting to progress in their adult years, because that was my personal story too. Smefri asks, if you were to design the perfect practice routine, what would it look like? What would you include? So let's say if you were to practice for a whole hour, 60 minutes. So the first 5 to 10 minutes could be a warm-up. It could be something like Hanon or maybe working through some scales. If you are a little bit more in the intermediate area, perhaps you can maybe even play pieces that resemble a nice warm-up. For example, recently I've been getting very much into this Bach BWV 999. It sounds something like this. Ideally, it's something that is somewhat medium to fast, has a bit of a motor kind of movement to sync up your hands. Get your hands moving, get your hands running, and warm yourself up to play pieces. And then you would spend a good chunk of it, so something like 30 to 40 minutes working on, of course, the pieces you're working on. Okay, so in that 30 to 40 minute window, I would be prioritizing on a lot of accuracy. So not really worrying too much about rhythm, but worrying very, very much about playing the right notes. You feel free to stop at certain points. Okay, let's say you're practicing a little part. Make sure in that 30 to 40 minute window, you are playing as many right notes as you can. So you have to catch yourself. Catch yourself when you're playing wrong notes. Stop yourself on those tracks and then try to maybe play it slower or play it so slow enough that you can absolutely play all the notes correctly. And at the end of that practice session, you can maybe do something fun, do some improvising. Maybe sometimes you can do some sight reading. Okay, try to read something new. And that concludes a nice 60-minute practice. My little footnote for a perfect piano practice routine is that for me, it doesn't always happen. Dependent on the day, my goals sometimes change. I don't always follow like a kind of set practice routine. I see my practice a little bit more seasonally. So for example, it might be 1-2 weeks that I work a little bit more in sight reading. And let's say in another 2 months, I'm working a little bit more on technique. Another few months, I'm working on maybe just learning a couple more Beethoven or Mozart sonatas. As long as you're playing the piano, engaging with music, I think that's a really good step. That's it for our Q&A today. If you want any more piano questions answered, please let me know in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next piano tutorial. See you guys.